The Eerie Hum. Chapter 1. The Inescapable Hum. I woke up to a low-frequency vibration, like the steady thrumming of an engine revving in my bedroom walls. My first thought was that someone had left their car running in the garage downstairs. Maybe the neighbor who lived on the other side of the shared wall had forgotten it again. But when I sat up and listened more closely, the humming persisted, a constant 440 hertz drone that sent shivers down my spine. It wasn't just an engine, though. It was a symphony of pure sound. My heart raced as I threw off the covers to get out of bed and investigate. But each step towards the source of the noise took me further from it. The vibration intensified with every movement, like the floor was alive and vibrating beneath my bare feet. It was then that I noticed something odd. The house felt cold. Not just cool, but unseasonably frigid for an August morning in our small town. My breath misted as I approached the living room window, but there was no sign of any unusual machinery or vehicles outside. The neighbors would be up and about soon. Surely they'd mention something if such a disturbance existed. I spun around to retrace my steps back into bed, but the humming remained constant. It was in every wall, floorboard, and even seeping through the baseboards. I checked each room from memory, heart hammering, convinced the house itself was haunted by some ancient resonance trapped within its wooden bones. The soundless TV, clock radio, refrigerator hums all went silent as if to mock me. Even my computer whirred down with a final sigh before plunging into darkness. In the kitchen, I pressed my palms against the counter and listened. It pulsed with an unhuman energy. A sudden shiver coursed through me when the vibration grew stronger, like a resonant chord from some unseen instrument. I stared at the walls, willing them to explain what was happening. Shadows cast by dawnlight flickered ominously along the plaster, as if they danced in response. Sweat beaded my brow, even under the sheet of warmth. It must be stress. Another sleepless night of work and too much whiskey. Days passed with no respite from this incessant low note, each day blending into one of mounting dread. My friends dismissed it over coffee. "Oh, you mean that weird neighbor's generator? It's been going all summer." When I mentioned it to Mom, she thought I'd picked up some strange illness. Said I was hearing things because I wasn't sleeping enough at work. No one in town ever heard anything out of the ordinary. As the hum intensified, so did nightmares. Haunting melodies that seared themselves into dreams and awakened with me, lingering like a residue on my skin once morning came. When I began to see fleeting shadows moving along walls from the corner of my eye, an unsettling dread crept in each night before sleep. It was as though dark figures danced just out of reach. During working hours, I clung to headphones at my desk, but there was still a distant bass thrumming through my earplugs. My dreams turned raw with visions, disembodied voices, whispers and wails that seeped in where the sound was most potent, eerie melodies that felt closer than ever before. The nights wore me down until one evening I lay awake, frozen as it changed pitch, oscillating between notes like a discordant guitar string. Suddenly the room temperature dropped, air congealing around me in a cold pocket of stillness that broke when an ethereal whispering began. A language I didn't recognize or understand, yet my brain picked up echoes. Faint phrases like "run" and what sounded like "get out now." In terror, I reached for my phone to record it, but the humming swallowed every attempt at sound. It was then that a gust of frigid air swept past me from behind with no door open, carrying hints of decay and forgotten places, the scent of old books and mothballs. Shadows crept closer, merging into shadowy silhouettes just as I glanced over my shoulder. They dispersed when I turned fully, My breath came out in a lunging gasp as the whispering sharpened. Distinct words now. You're mine, each utterance echoing with an ancient weight. An icy dread seeped through me. My skin ached, and I had to force air into my constricted lungs. In that moment, I recognized it wasn't just sound, but presence. Some entity in the walls watching, waiting. I couldn't shake it off, even as I cowered under my sheets until dawn. When morning broke, so did the hum's volume, gone and silent for a moment. The world had moved on while I'd lost grip of reality. My gaze clung to the wall, dreading what else might emerge from the shadows once night fell again. Chapter 2. The Hidden Message. Days blurred together in an anxious haze until the humming ceased as abruptly as it began. Silence deafened me, too quiet after weeks of that thrumming bass and whispers at night. Yet the stillness was short-lived. A week passed, then two with no sign of the unsettling vibrations or voices. I worked odd hours to cope during this intermission. But one evening when returning home, my car's engine sputtered in the driveway. It started anew. An eerie whispering merged back into the familiar bass note. The low pitch still thrummed through walls and floorboards as before, now intertwined with strange speech that was somehow louder than a shouting match. Phrases I couldn't fully understand, but they held a sinister intent. A voiceless chorus of whispers, each phrase overlapping in a maddening symphony. Find me, it rasped, a call from something ancient and otherworldly. Panic took hold. My fingers trembled on the phone to Google anything connected to inexplicable sounds while I listened with rapt attention through earplugs. Days earlier, during those interludes of quiet, random forums caught my eye. I've heard it too. Still hear it. We're not alone. A thread in a paranormal forum resonated deeply. Users described eerie whispers and low-pitched whistles they could never shake. The frequency might carry hidden messages no one else detected. Only the affected could pick them up on those frequencies. My fingers trembled to type my own findings into the forum's discussion, but typing how I hear it was daunting. Then came a night that pushed me over. An unsettling chorus of voices weaving in the bass, thrumming beneath. Find me. A raspy drawl echoed close by, drawing closer with each heartbeat as I cowered under sheets. No one else had this. In the morning light, my notes confirmed it. The hum and whispers didn't cease when outside or in different rooms within the house. They follow me everywhere, always just out of reach. Some unseen force wove its way into every corner of my life. It began to affect work, stealing focus, and making conversations seem hollow as the eerie murmurs blended into an unsettling symphony that echoed my thoughts. The one whose mind, or was something about being taken away, a low murmur in the back of my mind whenever I'd have a particularly terrible day at work. At night, they became audible, more than just echoes in my mind. My job was a blur, but I pored over those online forums like an obsessive. There were others. We formed a silent support group. Their experiences echoed my own, voices that only seemed to come from within their homes too. They had no answers, and neither did I. The room fell still once more. Not silent, but hushed. No whispers in the morning, as if whatever haunted me was listening, waiting for something else to unravel. In the stillness came a low thump from behind my back while I slept. The sound reverberated through every bone when I turned over. Get Out Now was more distinct than ever before. The voice just overhead, so close in that moment of sudden movement by my bed frame. A door opened, not used since moving in, revealing a space between floorboards, where a figure leaned into a shadowy recess. Shadows no longer danced. I saw only darkness. It spoke with each breath as an unseen form, an old man's raspy voice. Get out. My heart drummed out a death march while the bass thrumming waned to a muted hum in my ears alone. The figure spoke again, his words echoing within. You're mine, then vanished into blackness. I fled for a friend's house that night, but it followed, the whispering voice echoing in my mind with each step, as if tracking me through streets. Chapter 3. The Unwanted Truth. On the edge of town, huddled on their couch beneath a table, I realized it was more than sound. An unseen entity stalking me. They'd seen shadows like mine too. Shadowy forms that materialized and vanished in darkness or when looking directly. Every night since I left home had been this same maddening pattern. Each time the figure spoke closer. My friend's living room grew colder as they revealed their own encounters with the haunting bass hums. Voices from before dawn to dusk. In my sleep, the deprived haze, visions of old books, and an ancient tome materialized. A tome tied with leather thongs at both ends, pulsating in time with the humming. I dreamed of it, then heard You're Mine, echoing through the walls like a dying breath. When the door creaked open that night, dreading the presence returning, my friend spotted something dark and low. It hunched by my car out back, an ancient tome clutched in gnarled hands. It moved into a corner of their home, leather-bound, pulsing to that low, thrumming bass. They dared not look, but watched me through a door frame as I entered. They'd lived with this book since childhood and never spoke aloud. A silent guardian, they called it. When the entity emerged from the tome, I took flight. It followed into my new room, an attic space where that pulsing tome awaited. The voice resounded in my head, mine, as if claiming me. Shadows materialized, dark menaces with eyes. My friend could feel its pulse. They'd learned what to do. Now they begged for answers from a local professor researching frequency and energy. We fled their house, but the creature pursued, book held high like an offering, until we stumbled upon a narrow alleyway beneath their old oak tree. A new note echoed in my head. Get out. Was it calling? In the alley, I saw them at last. Skin gray, eyes blacker than coal. Ancient creatures tied to the tome and that accursed low thrumming. They'd lived with these shadows since childhood, never spoke aloud of them, until now. In their presence, they grew more defined and less transparent. I watched as it approached. My friend backed into a corner amidst my bag's contents while whispers echoed my thoughts. Shadows coalesced into the figure leaning by a book that held me enthralled, each note vibrating through my chest like a harp string plucked cruelly low. An ominous cadence that drew close with every second heartbeat until we were face to face. My friend opened their mouth and uttered "Get out," whispered as if speaking to something in the tome. An unseen voice howled, echoed by the book's thumping pulse. A guttural growl. Mine. The creatures lunged, claws extending with each beat of that pulsing book when my friend spoke again. A final word I'd never forget. They whispered secrets I couldn't hear. They knew me too well to be ignored. My friend huddled, and I grabbed for the leather tome on their lap, and it felt right. It didn't resist as I shut myself away in that attic room, the voice reverberating around me. You are mine, echoes of an old language etched into history with every thump from my heart. A word that echoed run, then mine, an eternal refrain. In nightmares, this tome pulled me under before I was dragged back. Voices in both languages mingled as I'd lie awake at night, mine. My friend fled. I held out. They left the attic room when they dared not face it directly while hearing secrets no one else knew. A door opened above us.